Hey y'all, Jill here with North Texas Vegetable Gardening, canning recipes, a little bit of everything. It's the much anticipated video. We're going to talk to my husband Greg on what he has been doing to improve our soil and what you all can do for your soil, whether you're a new gardener or whether you're an existing gardener, and what we have found that is working for us this year, and we're going to continue. Let's get started. So if you've been following us, you know that we changed up some of our methods this year on gardening, and one of the big things was Greg added a cover crop to the big high tunnel to see what we could do, and we also have it going on in our front yard. So I'm going to ask him some of the questions you guys have been shooting me, and we'll see what his answers are. So the first question everyone has is, what are we doing different with our soil this year that somebody who is new in gardening and somebody who is an existing gardener can do to change up for either the fall or the spring? Now, I know that you've gotten very aggressive with this process and this program, but let's start there.
Well, first of all, it all starts with the dirt, of course, and you want to improve your dirt is what you want to do, and it's not something that you can really describe in a matter of a few minutes. It's pretty in-depth. Regenerative farming, biology is really what you want to promote in your dirt, and most soils, at least most that have been farmed historically, are pretty deprived of living beneficial microbes and biology. So the first place to start is to basically get a handy soil analysis and have a look at that, and you can see what your mineral content of your dirt is, and you can kind of identify what type of dirt, sandy dirt or a clay dirt or a limestone dirt. So you kind of have a starting point and get an understanding of your dirt in your area, you know. That's the main thing to do first, is kind of figure out what you're working with, and then establish a little history about your dirt. What has been going on with your soil? What's been going on with your dirt? Has it been farmed? Because if it has, you could potentially be running into issues, as are we, with historical pesticide, fungicides, herbicides, and who knows what else. This land that we're on has been farmed. We've had our home here for about 20 years, but prior to that, this entire area, our land included, was farmed for cotton and corn, and that's been going on at least 50 years prior to our home being put here, and it could have been up to 100 years. They started farming in our area back in about the 1880s, 1870s, 1880s, I believe. So, and this area was known for cotton production, etc. So it goes along with identifying what's going on with your dirt. You know, if you get in a situation like us, you may face some challenges as far as what's been put into your dirt, because it stays, and potentially some of it, not everything, but it stays for a long time, potentially, some of it, and it's hard to get rid of. It's hard to turn your dirt around. So identify your soil, identify what kind of dirt you have, what it may be, and you may not have to get a soil analysis. You could possibly get just look online and see, identify where you're at.
Isn't there a graph?
There's an app called I think it's Land NPK, and it's put out by the NRCS, I believe, or the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. And you can put your zip code in or your GPS coordinates, and it'll tell you what type of soil that you have, you know, what the geological classification of the type of dirt that you have. And then you can, with that knowledge, then you can go do some further research and see online and see if you can find something else, like this soil is known to be deficient in potassium or deficient in this, or have an abundance of this, like limestone, you know, with calcium, obviously, you know, it's abundant. So, you know, so identify what you got, start there, and look at the historical, what's been done with it historically. If you're on a piece of property that, you know, has not been farmed and doesn't really have any history of pesticide used or you know, any chemical applications, let's say, of any type, except for, you know, and even heavy lawn, and I don't want to get off into that, but anyhow, if you don't have a real heavy historical his use of pesticides, etc., on your property, you'll have less problems. Like if you live or your property's in, let's say, the edge of a forest or something like that, where you've cleared out some trees or something like that, you're probably starting. There's been no conventional farming done, no recent, you know, within the last 100 years, farming done on it. You're probably going to be in pretty good shape, you know. And so identify your soil, and then once you do that, then you have to figure out, is your soil biologically active? And by that, you have to basically
define biologically active.
well, but it's the easiest way to do it is just to get a shovel and start digging. Okay, start digging in it, and if it's all hard and compacted and dried out, and or maybe really wet, you know, and overly saturated, that could be, you know, the other end of the scale. But get an idea of what's growing in it. Is it just weeds growing in it, or is it some nice grasses growing in it, or what, you know, what's going on? That'll give you, the more, just very, very generally, the more weeds that you have in it, the probably going to be the less healthy it is. But that's pretty much a generalization.
So let's talk about, we had a big aphid problem for several years. It attacked our crepe myrtles, it attacked our greens, it attacked, you know, bok choy and lettuces. So when you start talking about soil, and this could be for the beginning gardener or this could be for the existing gardener, it doesn't really matter whether you're doing in raised beds or if you're doing in tubs or if you're tilling up a plot of your land. What's the first thing people need to do to get their soil shaped up?
Well, again, identify what's going on. You may be starting off pretty good with some pretty good dirt, or you may be starting off with some really bad dirt with some challenges like sand or, you know, etc. You know, there's all kinds of extremes, so it's hard to say what something in particular. But one thing where you can start is definitely you can start inoculating your, let's say you have a garden or your raised beds or whatever, inoculating them with a biologically active compost, you know, with compost. And what I mean by biologically active, it has, you've heard probably of living soil, you know, the term, but it's full of beneficial microbes. There's fungus in there, and there's bacteria and protozoas, and I mean just a whole bunch of different stuff, and it's beneficials if the compost is done properly. Not all compost is done properly, and not all of it's been cooked long enough, and etc.
So what did we do before you planted in that high tile?
Well, we did a lot of things wrong. So let's skip what we did, and then let's go ahead and what we're doing now, and what you should do at starting out. And you can go online, and you could search for like a super soil or super compost, and that's very biologically active, like a Johnson Sue. It's Johnson SU type compost, or that's probably a good place there. A super soil, and I don't have one to recommend you, but you only need like a 10-pound bag, or 5-pound bag of it, and it's like some super stuff, and it's just full of bugs, and it smells terrible too, but it works very good. And just a handful of this stuff you can inoculate quite a large area. I don't have, but you'll have to, it does it quite a bit.
So what are we inoculating from?
That's a big that's a big subject, but
Is it insecticides, herbicides?
Well, that's a whole different side of the whole thing. Hopefully, let's just skip out on that and say that you're not dealing with historical overuse of chemicals on your soil. So if you're starting off with a good soil, and if you're working with containers, I would recommend sticking with an organic soil. Does not have any added fertilizers to it.
Like what kind?
Specifically nitrates and ammonium. Ammonium nitrate, there's phosphates, there's all kinds of goodies that are added in. But just go for a organic soil. And you can go with the bagged. And bagged ones are usually pretty good, as far as being consistently and...
As long as they're organic.
As long as they're organic. And the reason that you want to do that is because really have to be careful when you talk about it, but unfortunately, nitrates and ammonium will potentially bring in pests in certain conditions. If the conditions are right, it'll bring in pests, including aphids and spider mites, and not only pests, but it brings in diseases of all kinds. And it's not just specifically nitrates and ammonium nitrates. And that's a form of nitrogen.
So what's the best nitrogen to use?
If you want to use nitrogen, if you really need to use nitrogen, you have to be sparing with it. And an organic nitrogen would be the best way to go, and like an amino acid form. That's the best.
Which is what? Fish, chicken?
Well, it's like earthworm castings, or like compost that's been really cooked well, like that super compost I'm talking about. Which, let me get back to that real quick. If you want to start off your garden bed or your raised beds or whatever, buy a bag of this super compost. I'm not going to recommend a particular seller, but you can go on one of the big sites and you can search and
Super compost.
yeah, or do a search for Johnson Sue, Johnson SU space SU, okay, and once you hit on that, then you'll see what I'm talking about as far as, and you want it full of the good stuff, full of the bugs. It only takes a couple handfuls, like in a 8 by 10 raised bed. Like a handful. Mix it in, oh man, and go to town. Number 2, you want to keep your don't have any bare dirt.
Oh yeah, so one thing Greg has told me here in the last year is you can't have bare dirt. You always need something growing, whether it's in your containers, whether it's in your raised bed, or whether it's in your garden. You want something growing consistently. You don't want bare dirt.
Right.
So why is that?
That's because your beneficial bacteria and fungus and all these good bugs that you're looking for, they need the plants to survive, because they are having a symbiotic relationship with each other, and they're loving on each other. And once you rip the plants out and all the roots are gone, there's no more food for your good bacteria. And now they're just going to fry. The heat can fry them away. The soil just gets overheats. All right, the soil will overheat. There's no sugars being exuded and nothing. They're not getting fed. So then they die. And I'm guilty. I've got some bare spots. I'm working on it. And let me also say, I'm just a student here. I'm certainly no expert.
Yeah, I bet
I'm
you've
just
done really
learning.
well.
All right, I'm just learning. So don't, you do your own research. But I'm telling you, it's a compared to what I was doing last year. Last year I was the music out of my garden was playing, and my high tunnels was like a junior high death metal band.
So tell them what you did with the
This
cover
year,
crops.
it's like Mozart and Beethoven. Not that I have reached the ultimate, and I haven't mastered by any means everything, but it's like beautiful classical music playing right now. You can feel the vibe.
Tell them what you planted for the cover crop, so they know what maybe they can do now to prepare for spring.
Yeah, so no bare soil. So inoculate your soil, right? Whatever it is, you got a big 100-foot garden in the ground, get some of the super inoculant compost. 10 pounds will do like a big old, I don't know how many square feet, but it's that powerful. So get that, and then start cover cropping. Cover cropping is very, very important, and I have not mastered it, and I'm not a master at it. But what happens is, and it's very important, what types of cover crops you choose. So I'll go ahead and give you my recommendations, and it also matters what you're going to follow into it. So if you're planting a bare field of if you're going to cover crop a bare field in preparation for a corn crop, then there's going to be specific adjustments that you may want to do to.
Well, let's talk about just.
But in general, some to consider are buckwheat. All right, common buckwheat. The varieties. I'm not sure. You don't want any. You don't. And under your cover crops. No GM monkey O's, no GMOs, none. And then, so buckwheat, common oats, those are real good. And then legumes are real good, and daikon radish, that's really good.
Root crops.
And yeah, those are really good. And looks like sunflowers may be good. I'm not entirely sure on that one yet, but it looks like, because I got a good taproot that'll go down for that particular reason, just for breaking up soil compaction. But yeah, those are like some of the tops. Let's see, the legumes, some like clovers, triticale, which I believe is a clover type.
And you said the sweet, what is it, sweet alyssum?
Sweet alyssum, yeah, that's a good cover crop just for, it's real pretty and it grows close to the ground. It's a ground cover with a lot. Yeah, it's got a lot of flowers and it attracts pollinators real well. As far as the benefits that it's giving, from the root exudates and what's going out and all that, I don't know yet on that one. I'm not too sure. But the others that I mentioned, if you want to go with that, sorghum, Sudan grass, and rye, that's good. But you have to be somewhat careful with that, as far as it'll overtake. And, sunflowers will too. You got to be careful with those because they'll reseed. So you have to manage some of these, like rye. Unless you got a plan worked out and you're pretty familiar with cover crops, I wouldn't recommend that. Sorghum Sudan, I think, is easier to grow, and that's real good. And also corn, non-GMO corn, that's real good for your dirt. Apparently, it's very good, and it's good for the dirt in the sense that what these plants are doing, these cover crops, they're sending out what's called root exudates. And it's like they're sending juice out, and it's sugar. They're sending sugars out into the dirt. They're breaking up the dirt, of course, with the root structure, penetrating and breaking the dirt up, and then they're also they're exuding these sugars, and the sugars are what feeds the bacteria. You hear about people adding molasses all the time,
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. You can do some of that. You got to be careful with that. There's a whole nother discussion there on that and how proper use, etc. of that. But
Yeah, they're exuding root exudates, which is the sugars that the bacteria love, you know, and the fungus, and they're just going crazy. So that's one reason you want to plant these specific cover crops, because they're known to exude. The ones that I mentioned are known to be like really, really good. I mean, they're just juicing the dirt, right? So really super good there. And then termination is going to be a consideration too. You know, what you plant, how high it's going to get, when you're going to plant it, how are you going to terminate? And what I mean by terminate is how you're going to stop the stuff from growing. Like if you were planting rye, then it's going to go to seed, and if you don't want that coming back, then you're going to have to terminate it before it goes to seed.
Okay, so just real quick, we don't want to keep them too long, but just to kind of give them a touch on that we have made statements that insects do not attack healthy plants. Just for a brief, we've had a lot of people ask about grasshoppers, but I want you to kind of start with the suckers, the biters, or however the chewers. So give them that, and then we'll do another video going into that, but tell them about the life cycle of the bugs and the insect damage.
Well, I'll tell you what, to my understanding, and what I've, you know, I'll tell you to my understanding and what I've learned so far. Bugs don't attack, and disease as well will not attack a healthy plant. And you may be saying that sounds like a bunch of baloney. Well, it's not, and it's been proven scientifically by many studies that have been done, right? Just now being coalesced by brains smarter than me and people that better than me, but okay, we're back. The subject of bugs on plants and disease, both, it's a very deep subject, and there's a lot to it, but it can be boiled down pretty simply to, there's a let's take for example aphids. Aphids will show up in a plant that where it has the presence of high nitrates specifically, and ammonium will go along with that as well, but specifically for aphids there's high nitrates, and that's nitrogen, all right, a form of nitrogen, and they love what this form of nitrogen does to a plant. And what happens is, if there is an excess of nitrogen in, or nitrates rather, in your plants, your plant creates low-level sugars. Okay, they're monosaccharides. You've probably heard of monosaccharides and polysaccharides. That's a form of sugar. A low-level sugar is a monosaccharide, and an example of a polysaccharide sugar would be molasses, right? It's on a higher level. So what's going on anyways in the plant tissue, the high presence of nitrates and ammonium as well will overload, let's say, the plant to where it cannot process and it can't photosynthesize these nitrates within a 24-hour period, because ideally what you would want is these nitrates to be completely processed and metabolized, converted into proteins within a 24-hour period. But what happens is that the high level of nitrates will, the plant can't keep up with it, and it is creating with low-level sugars, monosaccharides, And that's the first level of the conversion process and the photosynthesis process. And then it would convert it to a polysaccharide, which is a higher level, and then it would convert it to a peptide, which is a form of a protein, and then the peptides join together to make full proteins. And that's to my understanding. I may be mistaken on some of that, but
So what do you do though to stop that process?
well, you have to identify why the high presence of nitrates are in your plant, and there's a few different reasons for that.
Too much
Potential
nitrogen?
it could, in the wrong forms. If you are applying a ionized, salt-based, water-soluble fertilizer that would say that contains nitrates and ammonium or ammonium nitrate, then that would be a way. If you apply too much to your plant, it just can't metabolize it all in a 24-hour period and convert it to proteins and get rid of all of these low-level sugars. The low-level sugars are what is attracting the aphids. In this case, the presence of nitrates and these low-level sugars. Okay, so you identify why you have these. Let's put it this way: if you have aphids, you have a high level of nitrates in your plant. It's proven scientifically.
So how do you leach it out?
Well, if you see them show up, the aphids, stop immediately doing any nitrogen applications unless you're giving them nitrogen in the form of amino acids or urea. You can use urea or amino acids, nitrogen in the form of amino acids, because it's very easy on the plant. The plant likes those a lot, especially the amino acid form. And so stop any more applications of ammonium nitrates. All right, stop that immediately. And then you can make sure that the plant is not stressed in any other ways as far as water. It's getting the correct amount of sunlight. Sunlight's very important. If you have a lot of shade or the plant's too shaded, this can also lead to a high presence of nitrates and ammonium.
Because you need photosynthesis.
Right. So it's just, you may not have been fertilizing your plant, but there's a high presence of you got aphids, right? But you haven't been putting this fertilizer on them, but you're seeing them, and it's like, what's the deal? So, well, it could be maybe some lack of water. If they're not getting properly watered, that could contribute, but maybe they're just not getting enough sun. That can be also.
So what's the first step when you start seeing aphids? So we've used
Stop
neem oil.
Stop using any water soluble, ionized, salt-based, nitrates, ammonium nitrate fertilizer. Stop that, because that's potentially what's bringing them in. And treat your plants with a super soil, the compost, a good super soil. Again, I keep going back to that, or the super compost, a Johnson S2 type compost. And then you can begin to apply a combination of some minerals, some mineral nutrition, and which would be molybdenum, sulfur, magnesium, and boron. Those are the ones that you want to apply to your plant.
Is that soil or foliar?
Well, here's the deal though. Here's the deal. You can probably get, if you stop putting the fertilizer on and you introduce a really super good compost, all right, just around the base of the plant, and so within just a short time, about a week or so, it'll start kicking in. the elements, the minerals I just mentioned, typically they're going to be present in your soil. That gets back to the Haney soil analysis, to where you look and you see what's present in my soil. And if you see some drastic deficiency, you'll know that you'll have to possibly amend your soil. But typically on most soils, you're going to have a profile that's pretty decent. You know, you may have a high amount of something that you may have to buffer out. But the way to do this, the way to extract these minerals that I'm talking about, is you can get them right from the dirt. You know, but you have to have a biologically active dirt to do it. Right?
And how do you do that? With the compost?
With the compost,
Okay,
yeah,
with
with the
compost.
compost.
A good biological compost.
Yeah, and you can also treat it with the the minerals that I described, but
Is that foliar or soil?
both,
Both?
soil primarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after you get through the aphids, what might you see after that? Because you've gotten rid of aphids, but now another insect comes along.
Yeah, well, this is very interesting because there's, you talk about the presence of low-level monosaccharide sugars in the plant, okay? And so when the plant has high nitrates, it's not photosynthesizing well, or it's unable to cycle it all out and convert it to proteins.
So what's the next bug?
Then you have these monosaccharides that are in, which is the low-level sugar, which brings in the aphids. All right, and then now you've been composting, you've stopped fertilizing, and so now what's happening is the plant's able to metabolize these sugars and convert them more effectively into proteins. All right, it's increasing, so the sugar level is going down, actually, right? And then at least the low-level sugars are going down, and then you may start to see a chewing bug. And an aphid is what's known as a sucking insect. So you'll see when you got this high nitrates and high nitrates specifically, you'll see these suckers come in, like aphids, specifically aphids. And you'll also see a group of diseases come in. I don't have them all off the top of my head, but a lot of the blights and Phytophthora and Pythium, and just a big long list through it. But what you're doing though is that when you get rid of the nitrates in the plant, and the plant's and get rid of these low-level sugars, and get the wheels turning in the plant, so it's converting to these nitrates and these sugars to proteins quicker, because you want them all out within a 24-hour period in order to really get the wheel it's like a flywheel. It'll start going, and it'll start slowly
Faster.
going, and then it'll start kicking. And this can be done just in a matter of weeks if you apply a good compost and possibly the minerals in the correct form that I was speaking of. And so that's a big win.
Yeah, we had a big win.
So the sugar level in the plants, again, this is a pretty extensive, very extensive subject, but a way that's been devised to, basically what it is that the presence of these sugars and nitrates can be graphed onto a chart, and the chart will be at the high, down at low, it will be a high presence of sugar, and then it will begin these low-level sugars, and then as you get your plant up to converting into proteins, all right, these low-level sugars will begin to disappear, and then to the ultimate place where you want, again, all of your nitrates and ammonium and these low-level sugars converted into proteins overnight in the 24-hour period, so the cycle can start again the next morning, early in the morning, and do the whole thing again. So
you're going up, the sugar level's dropping and you're going up. And this can actually be charted, all right? And then what they found is bugs follow this chart. The different types of bugs follow the chart.
So what's next?
So you have aphids, and these suckers are down at the bottom of the barrel here.
So you have very unhealthy
Yeah,
plants.
you got pretty unhealthy plants with all these excess sugars and nitrates, and then you start moving up into high ammonium rates, which is also corresponds with the sugar level in the plant. But you have high ammonium rates now. Now you start seeing the aphids, they boogie. And now guess what comes in? Now comes in spider mites, and I believe thrips start moving in. Okay. Yeah, they start moving in, but if you continue to eliminate these nitrates, get that flywheel turning, so you're converting these sugars into proteins, all right? You're moving your plants up the scale here. It's getting better and better, all right?
And you're just doing this with good compost, though.
Yeah, good compost and good plant
And the
nutrition.
minerals, yeah.
And that coupled along with not applying these water-soluble, ionized, salt-based fertilizers, ammonium, and now I can't say a lot. All I can say is what you do is you just look on the package, all right, and you look at the contents, and you kind of want to stay away from this stuff. And something that we haven't covered is the use of pesticides, fungicides, herbicides. Man, don't use those either.
Are you
Because
using
what
minerals
you'll do
to
is
control that?
It boils down to mineral nutrition too in the plant, but the mineral nutrition is derived from the active biology in the soil.
So you need biology in the soil.
Yeah.
You need minerals in the soil.
Yeah.
You need a super compost,
Yeah.
a super soil,
Yeah.
like the Johnson Sioux.
Yeah.
And if you can start out with that, you're going to what?
Oh,
Avoid
yeah.
a lot of that?
Yeah. Yeah. But getting back to the bugs, so we don't sidetrack too much everywhere. There's a scale. As the sugar presence goes down and the more effective converting into proteins goes up, these bugs will disappear, and then you'll see a new group of bugs. So you go from the suckers, which actually stick a straw into your plant and suck it up, suck the juice out. Then you start moving into the chewers. You know, there's going to be like caterpillars and beetles and hornworms. I believe, you know, you'll see a lot of these chewing insects, and they'll move in. And then from there, you'll get into
So you got a healthy plant.
You're going to have a wide group of insects, let's say, that you're going through, all right? And the top of the scale is
Grasshopper.
a grasshopper.
So you have pretty healthy plants if grasshoppers
Yeah,
are there.
so, I mean, this sounds weird, but here's the deal. If you're starting out with aphids, all right, and you got an aphid problem, and you stop the application of these fertilizers like I was speaking of, and you depend on it, rather than depending on chemistry, you want to depend on biology, right? On biology, right? In the soil. And also there's foliar sprays too. There are biological foliar sprays that you can get that are good, all right? So you can do those too as well. That's really beneficial. But so you're starting out with an aphid problem, and as you move up this scale, you'll see aphids go away, but then you'll start to see all these chewing insects come in. But in this case, it's something to be happy about. You're like, all right, man, because I know if I'm seeing the chewers and my aphids are now gone, that I'm moving my plants up the efficient photosynthesis scale. You know, the flywheel's kicking in. You know, I'm starting to go. And then you go up again, you're going again, you know, you get your chewers, and there's groups of diseases that follow these insect groups too. So it's super interesting. You've got to do your own research. I can't explain it all.
So this is called regenerative
Yeah,
gardening.
regenerative farming. And then also research your compost, making compost.
So-
And I would start with the Johnson Sioux. I have not yet made my own. I'm only about 6 or 8 months deep into this, and man,
Yeah.
it is like music to my ears because I am seeing results. You know, I'm studying it and I am seeing it happen, and we're turning the flywheel.
So
And it's
let's-
not happening overnight, but it's
What
happening.
can we do about grasshoppers right now? Anything?
You can continue to make sure that your plants are being fed what they need, but again, that's going to come through, you know, your active composting,
Yeah, active compost.
yeah, and your biology that you're introducing. And one good thing you can do, it's really that you want to do from
the beginning.
the beginning, is to add Mycorrhizae fungi to your. It's a fungus, and it comes in like a powder, and you can get it on, you know, on the internet, online, and it's very easy to get. And you can add that to your seeds, and what happens is it's a really
Before you plant?
yeah, before you plant.
Okay,
Well, right
so-
in furrow, and you add that in furrow, and that's a great way to. And what you want to do is, when you're cover cropping, you also want to add that in. So, anyways, going back to the insects and going back to the scale, the top of the chart in insects will be the grasshopper. All right. And they're a chewer, you know, they're still chewing away, but that's the top of the scale. You can keep getting your plants even more healthy
By
to
all
where-
of these methods.
yeah, by all this, you know, and they have to have proper water, proper light, proper nutrition, proper biology, temperature. You know, that's a biggie here, boy. You know, we're dealing with 100 in the shade right now. So all these have to be met, but that's the top of the scale, right? To my understanding. And you can go past.
Grasshoppers.
Yeah, you can grow. It is possible to grow completely disease-free and pest-free plants. Have I done it? No, I haven't done it yet. But
But
am
on
I
the way.
doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to do it, and I'm seeing some really killer results. And you can do it too. It's not as hard, but it goes against everything, and I mean
Conventional.
everything that conventional farming is doing right now. So be prepared if you're going to delve into
Scoffers.
it. If you're going to, oh yeah, you'll be constantly scoffed, but be prepared to be quite astonished, and just go into it with an open mind. But getting back to the chart, this has been charted, so it's basically one way that you can easily chart, one tool in your toolbox where you at home can do it too. It's called a brix chart, okay? And what that does is corresponds with these sugar levels that I'm talking about, and ultimately the health of the plant. And you can measure the level of sugars in your plant by taking a brix reading. And a brix reading is done with a refractometer. All right. What that does is it just passes light through the
Crushed,
juice.
yeah.
What you do is you take the leaves of your plant, and you'll take some. You can take at different levels, but typically you want to stay around the new growth up at the top. And you'll take a few leaves, and then you'll roll them up into, you know, a ball that's the size of a big marble. And then I've got a squisher. I got a pair of duckbill pliers, or you can use a garlic smasher. Yeah, garlic press. You can use one of those. And here's my meter
And how much was that?
right here. This is about $300 for this one, but they've got cheaper ones. This one's a digital, right? And they've got some that are just where you actually it's just a clear plastic tube, and then it has a little I believe it's a mirror. I don't have one, but it's a little mirror, I think, on the side, and you put a drop of water or juice on it, and then you look through it, and they're like 19 or 20 bucks. They're cheap, and they work pretty good. But I wanted digital because I wanted to see exactly the best this is calibrated.
what I got. And what you do is you get that plant juice and you put a drop right here. You get the plant juice and you put a drop right here, and then you will take a reading, press test and take a reading, all right? And it's gonna come back in the brix chart, and it's going according to the brix chart, which again is a measure of, the brix reading is a measure of dissolved sugars in a solution. And you guys out there that are doing the home brewers and the winemakers and beekeepers, you guys know all about these because you're measuring the sugar level in your
Plants.
yeah, in your beer or in your wine or what have you. But anyways, there's a, get back to the scale, there's a, it starts down at the bottom, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, goes up to 12. 12 and above, and what happens is the bugs actually follow, the types of bugs actually follow pretty closely this brix level reading, this, okay? And so if you, like, I believe if you have like 5 or 6, and I believe below brix reading, you squeeze the juice on here and you take your reading, you'll get a number between 1 and I don't know how high this goes.
It was over
But
12, wasn't it?
yeah, well, for plant purposes, we're talking about 12, right? And if you can get a 13, you're rocking, you know, apparently. So, but you squeeze your juice on here, you get your reading, and again, you'll see if you have aphids, you'll take a brix reading, and I
Be about a 4,
guarantee,
right?
yeah, I guarantee you to be about 5, maybe you'll be bumping a 6, and it'll be lower. I don't know about down into like a 1 or not, whether that's, but I bought that thing, and I took readings from our aphid infested everything, which everything
like
that we
a 4.
had.
It was a 4.
4.9 was the highest reading. And so
How often are you doing the compost and the minerals?
back to the chart again, so you could take your brix level reading. And this is a real easy way for just somebody, you know, at home that's even doing a garden, because to get an idea of where your plants are sitting and get an idea of what you're applying, how that, you know, your fertilizer and your nutrition or your compost that you're applying, which way is this moving me, you know? And you can usually see a change within a day or a couple of days. And sometimes it'll move you in the wrong direction. You go, uh-oh, I better not do that anymore. And this is just one tool in the toolbox. This is not the be all and the end all, because, you know, research it and research brix level readings in plants, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So, okay, on to what you want to do.
So that's the gist for now. Let them digest all of that, and then we'll do a part 2 and part 3 as we work through it, and you know, show our progress. But just a quick statement on what changes you saw quick in the tomatoes this year with your cover crop and with what we planted in that high tunnel with the cover crop.
Oh, huge, massive change.
And how many
No
pounds?
disease.
Yeah, no disease.
No disease.
No insects.
No insects to speak of. You're always going to see some insects popping around, you know, here and there, but no diseases, no insects.
So what we're suffering
Heat
right now
tolerant.
is heat stress. Yeah.
More heat tolerance. They've lasted. I've still got tomatoes out there. They look pretty ragged right now because they're photorespirating right now because of the heat and the wind. And I did have spider mites though move in on them, and yeah, some quick biological spraying and compost. You know, some dressing, some side dressing. You know, a compost tea can be done foliar, right? And that blew that away right quick. And that goes back to the their core. Spider mites love ammonium. That's their yummy and these high sugars. And you start moving them, right, by feeding your plants. So it's not easily wrapped up quickly. That's for sure.
Okay, well.
It's a lot to it.
Tell me you got a lot more to say, and we'll see him again.
Yeah. If you got more questions, I've got possibly some answers.
Yeah, send your questions, guys. So that's the end of Greg's interview. We're probably going to do a couple more videos. Go ahead and send your questions, guys, so that he can prepare to answer them for you. We appreciate you for sticking around. And he has a lot of knowledge, and he has done this very quickly. Like he said, in about 6 to 8 months, whenever we started getting hit back in the early or late last year and the early part of this year with all kinds of insects, we knew we had to do something different in all kinds of diseases. And so he started really researching this regenerative method. So stay tuned, send your questions. We hope to hear from you. Take care, God bless. Be sure and hit a thumbs up and a like, and we'll see you soon.